So let me introduce my two guests that we have in studio today. We have Leo Katzen. He is from Energy Northwest. He's manager of O&M Professional Services. And what Leo said to me about what that means is that he's in charge of everything other than nuclear power. All right, so we're going to turn to him for the wind questions. Then also we have Jim Concha. Is that right? Conca. I'll get that right. And Jim Conca is an author, research scientist. I mean, it goes on and on and on. He's co-authored a book that's titled The Geopolitics of Energy, Achieving a Just and Sustainable Energy Distribution by 2040. So you kind of see where some of his background goes. He also writes for Forbes.com on energy issues. So Jim's got quite an interesting background. All right, Leo, welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for seeing it.
Yeah. Let's start out with wind energy and how does it work? You cannot drive anywhere in the Northwest these days without seeing a lot of wind machines. So how do they work, Leo?
Well, wind turbines aren't really that much different than any traditional generating asset that we've seen, whether it be from a nuclear power plant or a steam turbine or traditional hydro. But the difference is it's what the prime mover is, and that is wind. So when you take a look at what composes a wind turbine, essentially you have the rotor, which is the thing you see on the front end of the turbine on top with the blades. And that whole component behind it is called the nacelle. And within that nacelle you have the main shaft that the rotor spins, and you have gearboxes which reduce or actually accelerate that speed that's connected to the generator. And that generator in turn is connected electrically to a step-up transformer, and in a wind farm you have multiple turbines. So all these turbines are electrically connected into what they call a ring bus, and that ring bus then transmits it to a step-up generator, step-up transformer at the substation, and then that gets delivered into the electric grid.
Okay, so when wind energy is created, it is immediately passed down the line. There's no way to save any of it.
No, there's no storage capacity in wind, although there are some technologies, energy storage technologies that different entities, including Energy Northwest, we've looked at different battery storage type applications that could augment the application of wind energy.
But we don't have them to use in everyday use right now. Is
presently at Energy Northwest now.
But are they somewhere in the world?
Yeah, there's a lot of areas. California is very active in terms of taking a look at energy storage, mainly because of the issues they're dealing with solar and the ability to be able to store that energy for off-peak hours when the sun goes down and the solar energy assets aren't available. Then we discharge out of the storage devices. Typically, they're lithium-ion or they're called vanadium flow type technologies for battery storage.
Mm-hmm. And Energy Northwest has one wind farm?
Yes.
Nine Canyon?
Yes, Nine Canyon Wind Farm.
How many turbines are there?
63 turbines total, and Nine Canyon was actually installed in 3 phases. The very first phase was in 2002, and we brought on board 37 units at 1.3 megawatts each. And a year later, we brought on an additional 12 units, same thing, 1.3. And then in 2008, we built 14 turbines at 2.3 megawatts.
Okay, so we have 63 out here near us in the Tri-Cities that we can see. We drive to Portland and they're just scattered all over. Yesterday I called them a blight, and people heard that. That's what I think. We have beautiful hills that are natural, not man-made, God-made. And then we have these big metal things on there. So if I'm driving to Portland and I see all these machines, I'm thinking, wow, that's producing a lot of energy. How much energy is that producing?
Well, right now in the region, it's if you take a look at the beginning of 2000, wind energy was pretty much, prior to 2000, was a boutique type generating asset. A lot of folks jumped into it for kind of isolated individual applications, but since 2000 to present day, we've implemented about 40, within the Bonneville Power Administration's balancing authority, there's about 4,500 megawatts of wind energy in the system.
So what does that mean?
So when you take a look,
for me to understand.
So when you take a look at 4,500 megawatts, Columbia Generating Station is about 1,000 megawatts. So that's about 4 nuclear power plants in terms of installed capacity, which is very significant.
Okay. How does that compare to like hydropower?
Again, within the hydropower system, if you take a look at it, it's growing. The 4,500 megawatts is almost about a quarter to a third of what the installed capacity is on the federal Columbia River power system, which, I mean, it's just exploded over the past 10 years.
So why have so many wind farms been developed? Are there tax advantages? I mean, what has spurred this?
Well, there's a lot of components I think are drivers to wind development. When you take a look at Night Canyon Wind, a lot of it is social, environmental responsibility. When Night Canyon first phase of Night Canyon was actually installed in 2002, which was prior to the I-937 initiative, which mandated a certain percentage of renewables being delivered by utilities from their energy portfolios. So back in 2002, it was just a lot of proactive utilities saying we need to look at alternative type of generation assets that are positive and good for the environment, zero emitting type assets. So we had partners that approached Energy Northwest and worked with those electric utilities to develop the first phase of Night Canyon in 2002, and same thing in 2003. And then in 2008 is really, if you take a look at the 2008 partners, they're relatively the same partners that we had in the first two phases. Mm-hmm. Another component, like I mentioned, is the passing of initiative, or I-937 in 2006, which mandated, again, certain percentage of energy being delivered from electric utilities. I think the structure of I-937 was in 2012, 3% was required, and that jumped to 9% by 2016, and then 15% by 2020. So there's certain hurdle rates that electric utilities that have over 25,000 customers need to meet in order to meet what is now the Energy Independence Act of Washington.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to bring Jim in here, and so, well, the initial initiative to use renewables was passed by citizens.
Right.
Yeah, and then the legislature got involved in that and made some modifications. Is that correct?
Yes, and the biggest modification is to claim that hydroelectric is not renewable, which is odd, because it is, of course.
But they did it for a reason. I mean...
Well, yes, because we have so much hydro that there would be no reason to build wind.
Right.
Because we are essentially 80% non-fossil fuel. So, Washington State is actually the lowest carbon emitting state in the most carbon emitting area in the industrialized world. We produce more energy with the least carbon of anyone. Mm-hmm. So it's actually quite nice. Yeah, so that was really a way to get wind in, okay, because we don't really need it, because wind is really competing against hydro here, and it should be competing against fossil fuel. And since we're soon to close our only coal-fired power plant, wind, it doesn't make a lot of sense in Washington State because we have so much hydroelectric. So it's kind of strange. Now also the 4,500 installed megawatt capacity for wind is a little strange because it only works about a third of the time. So we have about 1,800 of the big wind turbines in Washington State, and altogether they don't produce as much electricity per year as our single nuclear power plant.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to add this what's called the capacity factor, or how often is it producing as much as it's supposed to produce. So wind capacity factor in Washington State is about 27%, and the capacity factor of the nuclear power plant is about 98%. It was 98% last year. So it's just churning out power all the time.
Right. And hydro is as well, isn't it?
Well, actually, well, it's the capacity factor for hydro is about 40 to 50%. It could be much higher, but there's other things involved like fish and water supply and things like that. So that BPA adjusts it to fit the other things, whereas the nuclear plant is just supposed to churn out power, and that's all it's supposed to do, and it does.
Wow, so this is actually a very, very complicated matrix of all of these different sources happening at the same time, and some that can be stored, some that can't.
Right.
And it all goes to Bonneville to basically figure that out?
Well, there's a couple, but Bonneville is the big one in this region.
Yeah. Leo, are there any other plans in the future to add more wind to Energy Northwest?
Well, we're always looking at opportunities. A lot of it, Energy Northwest's goal is to be the region's leader and in terms of providing clean energy and energy solutions, and being a responsible steward of the generation assets that we provide to the region. When you take a look at forecasts for wind in particular, because of the Renewable Portfolio Standard, or the Energy Independence Act for Washington State. There's forecasts that are as high as 3,000 megawatts over the next 10 years potentially for wind in the region. And we are actively working with our members to see where the right fit and what the opportunities that our members are looking for, and meeting the needs of our joint operating agency membership.
Okay, we've got a caller on the line. Let's go ahead and add them to our conversation.
Probably about 5,000. Right. Because they only last about 25 years as well. Right. Right. So as you know, if you look at coal plants that last about 40, you look at a nuclear plant that lasts about 60. So you need to build, you know, twice or more in order to have a life cycle, you know, production, which is equivalent. Tear it down and build a new one, unless it's just like, you know, the gearbox gets replaced and things like that, which is spendy but doable. But I should mention the amount of steel in concrete and wind is 10 times more than anything else. Per kilowatt hour produced, it actually takes 10 times as much steel and concrete from wind as gas or nuclear or coal. Yes, in terms of mining and smelting and things like that,
Yeah.
Hey, I'm glad you could join us today. We're talking about energy. Leo Katzen from Energy Northwest is in the studio today, along with Jim Concha. He's an author, research scientist. Is this a good area for wind, the Tri-Cities?
It's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah, because the wind gusts that you need don't blow very often. So we get these termination winds there, and they're horrible, but wind turbines need to be operating between about 20 and 40 miles per hour. Above that, they shut down so they don't get hurt, and below that, it doesn't produce much. So really, the best place to put wind turbines is in an area that has steady, constant winds, like Tornado Alley, going from Texas to North Dakota. And there, this capacity factor, how often they're actually producing energy, is over 40%. So it's actually a fantastic place to put them.
Do they have them there?
Yes.
I mean, big farms of them? Yeah.
Huge ones. In fact, Iowa is now about 30% wind.
Iowa is?
Yeah.
30%?
Yeah, 30%
okay.
wind. So there's the actual cost of that wind turbine, which is about 1.5 million, and then there's another cost to hook it up to the grid, which often can be pretty significant, you know, depending upon how far away it is.
And that's one of the biggest considerations when you do look into new installations of wind farms, is where the nearest transmission is. If you take a look at where the majority of wind is in the state of Washington, also in Oregon, it's along the Columbia River, Lower Columbia River, where it's relatively close to the 500 kV east-west transmission from DPA. But you're right, that's one of the challenges with wind is when you're siting and permitting, taking a look at where those available transmission lines are. Transmission is all typically overhead, above ground, yes. Oh, so when you're talking about the wind farm itself, the ring bus that I discussed earlier, that is typically underground for most wind farms. So everything electrical and on the wind farm site is underground, and then that goes to a substation, which then goes overhead to the transmission system.
Hey, thanks for calling. So who owns the land that a lot of these machines are on? First I was thinking that you were renting land from farmers, and I thought, wow, that's a great deal for them. Is that what?
Sometimes.
Yeah, for Night Canyon in particular, that is the case. So we've actually established leases that have extended beyond the actual life of the project, and with options to extend. And in turn, we make lease payments to the landowners.
Yeah.
Which is a benefit for a lot of folks that that have that opportunity to host wind farms, and it's a added extra additional income for them.
Yeah, that does sound good. We have another caller. Let's add them to our conversation.
About 9 cents. However, the price and cost are completely different things. How much it costs to produce that energy is one thing. How much we pay for it is different. So wind gets so many tax credits and subsidies that you don't see that cost. I mean, someone does, taxpayers do, whatever, but the ratepayer doesn't see that. So it depends upon how it's structured in terms of the pricing and things like that. But generally, wind is very cheap to the ratepayer, but not cheap overall. I'm not sure if that answered that. Yes, yes. So what BPA does is, when wind comes, when you get a huge burst of wind and it flares up and the wind turbines begin to produce a lot of energy, they immediately ramp down hydro in order to take that on. You know what I mean? Well, you really can't store it because these big hydro dams are not meant to be storage facilities, right?
They're run-of-river, yeah, what you consider run-of-river facilities. So you're basically at the mercy of how Mother Nature is providing that water for you in a particular year. And that goes back to our discussion of, the variability of the cost of hydro because of the supply, depending on weather.
So we're sitting here in this mecca, basically, of energy production. We have all these different methods being created right here in this area. And I think what I heard from you before is that diversity is incredibly important. We have to have a variety of different methods.
Right.
Is that your thought?
Yes, yes. And so I recently just put on some solar panels on my roof, to get street cred, so. And it actually works great because the state and the feds are giving so many price breaks and so much subsidy to it that it'll pay for itself in 5 years, and after that, for the next 15 or 20 years, I'll pretty much get free electricity, and the solar panel produces about a third of the energy I need, which is not bad. Now during the day, like right now, it's producing like crazy. I can't use it all, so it goes back to the grid, and I get 54 cents a kilowatt hour, which is insane and actually obscene, but that's okay. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, the price and the cost have nothing to do with each other, in this case. But a nice diverse mix will allow you to mix and match, deal with heat waves and things like that. Because essentially, in heat waves, solar is doing great, but wind is doing terrible.
Yeah. Well, let's look into our future. And what are the things that would be important for us to consider when we look at energy for the future? What are the most important things to be considered?
Reliability.
Reliability.
Right. When someone plugs something into the wall, they better get electricity, or else they're not going to be very happy.
Wow, so that's reliability of the source, reliability of the grid system.
Everything.
Overall reliability, yeah.
Okay.
Overall. And again, I mean, Bonneville and Energy Northwest, and this country has been incredibly, the energy industry has been focused on reliability for 70 years, and they've done a great job. And all you have to look at are other countries where they don't have the infrastructure like India, where it's totally unreliable. You may get electricity 2 or 3 hours a day, and then you can't plan, you can't actually have a quality of life without reliable sources of energy, and that's really key.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, and I'm just to add on to Jim's. That's really kind of the mantra for the industry is that reliability issue. Is we've gotten to a point where everybody expects the light to come on every time they flip a switch. And if you've had the opportunity to go to a developing country, you realize just how fortunate we have it here in the United States of having the abundance and the reliability of the electric grid that we do have.
Well, what do you think about the effort in the past, I'm going to say the past 20 years, to create a whole bunch of renewable options? Has that been useful to our future, or have we spun our wheels?
I would say that it's been very useful to our future. And the reason why I say that is it's allowed us to take a good hard look at the existing infrastructure of how we traditionally generate power, but we throw this mix of renewables that are not necessarily base load or intermediate load type things, but how do we integrate this into our system? And the industry has learned a tremendous amount over the past 10 years with wind. We're learning a lot about solar, and these are assets that are necessary to push the energy future in America. And I believe it's the Energy Information Administration that recently put out a report that said it's national security. It's a function of national security to have that diversity in our generating assets in the United States.
And as a scientist, I mean, I love to play. So yeah, as a society, we need to play with this and see what works and what doesn't work, because some things are not going to work. And so you need to run this out, come up with new design nuclear, new design coal, new design gas, new design wind turbines. So you need to keep progressing, and the only way to do that is to actually get out there and do it, find out what doesn't work, and then redo it. But find out what works and then keep it.
Yeah. Our number, I'm going to give that out again. It's 547-8726 if you want to join the conversation. What is new on the horizon out there as a potential new source of energy that hasn't quite totally been developed, or no one has jumped on it yet?
There really isn't. We kind of know this.
I thought you were going to tell me about small nuclear,
okay, yes.
small modular.
Yes,
Yeah, I thought
small
you were gonna
modular nuclear reactors, because we know those. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I mean, it's not new. It's not, it's not dilithium crystals or anything like that.
Okay.
It's new designs of nuclear energy, and there are two types. We can make the fission type, the type which we have now, better and more efficient and more flexible, like small modular reactors, and then we can go to actual fast reactors, which are a completely different type. They burn everything, and so there, you've heard of TerraPower, Bill Gates' nuclear power company in Bellevue, and that's a whole new type of reactor. And we built a couple of prototypes, and they work great. That's the real future of nuclear. So once we get to fast reactors, we'll be burning even the old fuel we have now, the spent fuel. You can burn those in fast reactors. So you get 10 times as much, 10 times the amount of energy out of the same amount of uranium as our present reactor. So that will be a game changer.
So we won't have to find ways to store that old fuel?
Well, not for 10,000 years. You store it
Yeah.
for 300 years, and then it's gone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
it's great stuff.
Is Energy Northwest involved in that?
Yes, we are. We're actually engaged with the small modular reactors, where we've been involved with different work groups, and it's really on the front edge of the design right now. And as Jim had mentioned, it's still out in the future, but we are engaged in SMRs.
So tell me what you're experiencing out there in terms of the sentiment of nuclear. It has not been popular. We have seen very few new plants. I mean, obviously we have one in the Northwest. That's it. So what's new on that horizon?
Well, there's so much misinformation about nuclear out there, and it's been confused with weapons for so long that it's kind of hard to separate the two, and they're completely different. I mean, weapons bad, energy good. So nuclear weapons you might think about, but nuclear energy has nothing to do with weapons.
I know, but it still produces a product that hangs around forever and hurts people.
Well, yes, yeah. Oh,
Yes.
but there's not much of it. I mean, all the nuclear waste ever produced by all the reactors in the world over 60 years would fit in one good-sized soccer stadium. So yeah, it's weird stuff. It's odd. We know very well how to deal with it. We even know where to dispose of it, although we're not allowed to do that yet. But
Yeah.
we will. That's fine. Whereas coal waste, to give it an example, produces that much volume every 30 minutes. So, yeah, so there's about 11 million times more waste generated from coal than from nuclear. And it's pretty toxic and really nasty stuff. And we don't deal with that well at all. So again, we know how to do this. We know how to store the waste. No one has ever died from nuclear and energy in this country, period. And so, yeah, the safety factor is rather amazing. People don't think about that because they always have this mushroom cloud in their head.
Mm-hmm. Are we changing attitudes? I guess that's the bottom line of what I'm curious about. Leo, you're in that world.
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, because of the social cost of carbon and the issue with greenhouse gases, I think a lot of folks are taking a real hard look and reconsideration of what their stance really are in nuclear. It's when you take a look at the state of Washington in particular, we're looking at decommissioning our only fossil fuel plant here in the next 2021, 22, which is going to be a significant displacement of energy. And that's the challenges that we need to look forward into the future. And I think just because of the greenhouse gas issues, folks have been really taking a good hard look at nuclear again.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a quick break here. I still got a question I want to ask you about the politics of energy. So we'll be back in a moment. With all these windmills that we've seen around the Northwest, boy, I sure hope we are actually producing them and manufacturing all the parts here in the Northwest. Are we?
No, we're not.
Why are we not?
Because we don't have them here. And in fact, of the 10 biggest wind turbine manufacturers in the world, GE is the only U.S. one. But we do make some small components here. As opposed to solar, in Washington, we make the entire the entire system here in Washington State, which is the only reason you can get the 54-cent a kilowatt hour rebate.
What now? I'm sorry, I missed that. We're making
yes.
the components for solar here
Yes.
in the state of Washington.
Everything,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whereas wind, the big blades and those have to be shipped in.
Yeah, that's too bad. Okay, we missed the boat on that one. Yeah. What about politics of energy? Politics enters into every aspect of our life. And what about the politics of energy? Money makes the world go round.
Yes, and which is why it's funny, because the cost of energy would, to me, govern what you choose a lot. But we don't seem to do that. So there's a lot of misperceptions of what we need and what we want and what it actually costs, and those kind of lend to some ideologies of where we should go. And so we've talked about this a lot. And Judith and I came up with this third, a third, and a third. So yeah, like Leo was saying, you want a broad sweep of sources. You want a diversified source. So a third fossil fuel, a third renewable, and a third nuclear gives you this nice mix that you can mix and match, and you can deal with any issues of weather and other reliability issues, so that when someone plugs into the wall, they will get the electricity they want.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes, what I really wish is that we could take scientists or people that are knowledgeable about an issue, put them into a room and have them come up with what we should be doing. And all other interests are blown out. Okay.
That would be nice.
Wouldn't that be great? All right, we've got to take our final break here. Man, it was really great having you guys here. Leo Katzen from Energy Northwest and Jim Concha. Really enjoyed this. We'll have another conversation about energy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.